Fool for Love. When Buffy is nearly killed, she goes to Spike to learn more about how previous Slayers died.
We open with Buffy fighting Brian May, back when he was cool, and while she was making dumb quips, he ends up turning the stake on her and shoving it right into her midsection. The end.
Unfortunately, Riley shows up with a taser, which he doesn't even successfully use, but he does drive the vampire away.
This dude just took out the Slayer, and a regular, non-super strength human is going to scare him off.
And one of below average intelligence. And when Riley was patching Buffy up in her room, I noticed David Boreanaz' name in the credits, which made me very unhappy.
Buffy's insecure because the vampire was just a regular vampire. It doesn't matter that he was one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Well, he's still alive, so I guess I could say is. I mean, these videos take a while to edit, so maybe he will be dead by this time this comes out.
When Dawn and Joyce come in, Buffy hides what happened from her mom, and Joyce says she's feeling better, which means she'll probably drop another dish later in this episode.
Because Buffy's hurt, Riley says he'll patrol that night, and he takes the rest of the gang with them.
As if they would somehow be helpful instead of just getting in the way.
And they're always patrolling in this giant cemetery. Do they always go to the same place? Do vampires only emerge from this particular cemetery? Or are they out there in other places sleeping on the sidewalk?
And I note that despite the events of the previous episode, Tara is not hanging out with them, so I guess she's not part of the gang.
I didn't even notice that. Damn it.
And of course, they're botching things up, as expected, and I was hoping they would all die.
Riley is irritated at how dumb they're being, even though he's being dumb too. But they continue to stick together because friends will be friends.
Okay, is that a Queen song?
Yes, that's a popular Queen song. The three of them are not really good company.
And Xander is eating generic brand chips, probably because the crew couldn't help eating the Cheetos that he was originally supposed to have. And I did think it was funny seeing Riley try to be professional, in quotation marks, while the others are just kind of there.
Meanwhile, Buffy is researching past Slayers with Giles, and she's upset that there are no details about them, just that they all ended up dying.
And since Xander didn't have those Cheetos to eat earlier, they find a different way to get product placement in there.
I realize that every Slayer comes with an expiration mark on the package, but I want mine to be a long time from now, like a Cheeto.
And she's right. Anytime I'm hungry and don't want to have to walk the 15 feet to the fridge, I just reach down and feel around under the couch for some stray Cheetos, and they taste exactly the same as they did when they came out of the bag.
That's gross. Buffy wants to know what she can do to prevent making another mistake. And Giles says,
"It would help if you were a completely different character."
So she won't end up like all the other Slayers who are all dead, all dead. That's Queen song.
Okay. Buffy goes to Spike's crypt to learn more about how he killed 2 Slayers, and for some reason they then go to the Bronze to discuss how he murdered people right out in public. Buffy saying that she'll pay him if he tells her. And she holds up more money than I've ever seen in real life. Where does she get that money from? She doesn't have a job. I guess it's that Cheeto sponsorship.
Spike says he's always been bad. And then we cut to a flashback to 1880 when he was still human and a dork.
He is a wimpy poet pining after a girl named Cecily, and is embarrassed when some asshole reads one of his poems out loud. And I thought it was ridiculous that the part that they have a problem with is effulgent and not "my heart has grown a bulge in it" or whatever he says.
They're also talking about a rash of disappearances lately and the fact that they found a human body.
And they say that he is known as William the Bloody because his poetry is bloody awful. Sorry for culturally appropriating British culture, but that's what they say in the episode. I don't want to offend anybody.
When he sees Cecily sitting down, he goes to talk to her, tells her he's a good old-fashioned lover boy.
Okay, finally one that I recognize. But she is disgusted and tells him that he is beneath her.
Making him feel like the Invisible Man. I got so many.
Okay. William storms out into the street and definitely doesn't bump into Angel. Then Drusilla comes along.
Who we have not seen in forever.
She tells him she recognizes his true worth that no one else sees, and when she goes into vampire mode, he allows her to bite him.
Back in the present, the gang spots and follows Brian May, who goes into a crypt with more vampires, so Riley decides not to engage.
He says they can come back and kill them during the day, for some reason assuming they would just stay in the same place.
Back at the Bronze, Spike continues his backstory about how he joined up with a gang that consists of Drusilla, Angel, and was that Darla?
Yeah.
When did she die? Was that season 1?
Yes. It was the episode where she had the 2 handguns.
Forgot how good this show used to be.
And it turns out that Spike has been telling Buffy all of this. I thought he was just remembering it on his own. Why would he tell her about how he became a vampire? That's not what she asked for. That would be like asking someone for a donut and they give you Cheetos instead. Spike makes it sound like he was in charge back then, but we see that Angel and Darla are criticizing his actions. And I know that Angel's accent, while still bad, is not nearly as over the top as it was in previous seasons. I'm kind of disappointed.
And he's mad at Spike because he always blows their cover and they have to live in hiding. And Angel says, in those circumstances, it's hard to keep yourself alive.
Angel tells Spike he's going to end up being killed by the Slayer, and Spike tells Buffy that that's when he became obsessed with learning about the Slayer. He tests Buffy and tells her she needs to know that she has to reach for a weapon when vampires already have theirs. And when he transforms, apparently no one in the Bronze notices.
We cut back to 1900 in China when he's fighting the first Slayer that he killed, and they fight, and he ends up killing her. It truly was Chinese torture.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. He kills her by just biting her on the neck, and she weakens and dies immediately. She must not have been that great of a Slayer. Then Drusilla walks in, and they bang.
I have a question. So this Slayer was in China. Buffy's the Slayer in the United States.
I hope you're not asking me this question, because I probably don't know the answer.
How do they handle vampires on an international scale?
That's a good question. You would think if the Watchers are in charge of kind of guiding the Slayers or whatever, that they would say, hey, there's this big important thing happening in this other location. But it seems like stuff only happens around Buffy because she's the main character. I mean, I get that the Hellmouth is there, but stuff comes in from other places to Sunnydale, so it's already out there doing other things.
And there have to be vampires worldwide.
Yeah, so, I don't know. Good question. I don't remember what your question was, but I assume it was a good question. They find Angel and Darla, and Angel seems jealous that Spike killed the Slayer, and then they have a trailer moment as they walk off.
Man, that thing was so cliche.
Oh, man. I mean, Spike doing that weird, thing
Jump.
where he hops off the thing. Yeah, I don't know.
I felt like I was watching a 90s John Carpenter movie.
Oh, man.
That's not a good thing.
In the present, Buffy is disgusted by Spike, talking about how killing a Slayer was getting him hot, and he tells her she should stop being so overconfident and touches her wound, which causes both of them to cry out in pain, drawing everyone's attention when somehow nothing else that has happened yet did so.
Yeah, including his face turning into a monster. Back in the cemetery, Riley decides to not wait until daytime like he said he was going to do, and he just charges headlong into the vampire crypt. That's a Queen song.
Headlong into the vampire crypt?
Yeah, that whole thing.
Okay,
No,
wait,
just
which part?
headlong. Just the word
Okay.
headlong. Don't you remember that Queen song?
And for some reason he punches a vampire a few times before throwing a grenade in, or even just dropping a grenade. I didn't really see the point of the whole thing.
And the editing was weird because everyone just kind of stared at the grenade for way too long before doing anything. So Riley runs out and it blows up. But there have to be people that live near this cemetery. A grenade just went off and blew the shit out of that crypt, and nobody calls the police or goes to investigate or anything. That building exploded.
Outside the Bronze, Buffy and Spike fight, kind of, while he tells her that it was the Slayers that got themselves killed. And she forces him to tell her about how he killed his second Slayer.
In 1977, on a subway car in New York,
Accompanied by some funky music.
Spike is fighting the second Slayer. And we keep getting interspersed cuts of him fighting Buffy while he's explaining how he was fighting the Slayer back then, but his chip doesn't seem to be bothering him.
He said that as long as he doesn't actually intend to hurt her, then it won't do anything.
So it's the intention to harm.
Yeah, I guess if he accidentally, hits somebody with a door or something, it'll be fine.
But does it have to be the intention to harm while he's taking physical action at the same time?
I mean, you're asking questions that the writers never would have even considered, so I don't know.
Because if it's just intention to harm, every time he says, I'm going to kill the Slayer, he should go, oh, my head really hurts just because I thought that.
Again, I talked about how does it distinguish between humans and demons, but yeah, there are definitely more questions that are never going to be answered. Spike tells Buffy that she really wants to know what death is like, and so did the other Slayers.
And since he's always wanted to kill her, when her death wish comes true, he'll be death on 2 legs. And in the subway car flashback, with a flick of the wrist, another one bites the dust.
And we find out that that's where he got his leather jacket from.
And it's in really good condition for being so many decades old.
I guess the one that I use used to be my dad's, and it's still in good condition. And I shove it in my locker every day, so I don't know.
Who did he kill?
Buffy is disgusted and tells Spike to go away, and he tries to kiss her, I think, which weirds her out.
She's really thrown off by his body language.
He tells her she wants it, and she knocks him down and says she would never want it from him because he is beneath her.
Which echoes what Cecily said, which was a pretty low blow, but very effective.
And she throws the money at him and leaves.
And he almost comes to tears.
But he resolves to get angry instead, which I figured meant he probably wouldn't do anything.
But he goes back to his crypt and grabs a shotgun,
Which he has for some reason.
saying the death of the current Slayer is coming soon.
Harmony is skeptical that he can kill Buffy, especially with the chip, and she even points out that he failed before he had the chip, which I thought was a surprisingly good point for her to make.
So do projectile weapons activate his chip? Because he's not physically harming anyone with himself, with his own body.
Yeah, we saw when he pointed the fake gun at Xander that it activated it. Back in insert episode title here.
What if he didn't think the gun was loaded, but it was, and then he shot someone?
You mean the Alec Baldwin effect?
Too soon.
Then we cut to South America in 1998, which would be insert season number here, where Drusilla criticizes Spike for not killing Buffy, and says when she looks at him, that's all she can see.
And she says she needs to leave, saying, I can't live with you.
Buffy goes home and talks to Joyce, who tells Buffy that she's staying overnight at the hospital. She says it'll probably turn out to be nothing, but it doesn't sound like it'll be nothing.
But for now, she's doing all right.
Buffy goes outside and sits on the porch and cries.
Where Spike and his shotgun are waiting. He sees her crying, and that she has blurred vision. That was an obscure one.
Okay. As opposed to some of those other ones. Okay. He stops when he sees her and asks what's wrong and if he can help.
Showing that their characters might be having a breakthrough. And if he ends up sticking around, she won't have to face it alone. But he can't quite muster up the courage to tell her to hang on in there.
The You're My Best Friend has to fit in there somewhere, the way he sits down and...
No.
No, what? He tries to console her, but doesn't know how. Fool for love. Overall,
I kind of wanted Spike's backstory to be embellished, and the death of the 2 Slayers would have been accidental, but he would have taken credit for it. That would have been funny.
oh yeah, there's a lot of comedic potential there that they didn't exploit.
And it is Spike himself narrating his past, so he could be making some stuff up. It was good to get more of his backstory, I guess, even though it really didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. And like you said, it didn't really answer a lot of Buffy's questions. And we're still pushing forward on his attraction to Buffy. It still doesn't make any sense, but I guess that's why it's a crazy little thing called love. And if Spike were more confident, he might have las palabras de amor.
Is that okay,
Yes.
I'll just assume, okay.
Spike did point out in this episode that there are thousands of vampires, and I thought, yeah, there's also tons of other demons and whatnot, which means the Slayer doesn't really stand a chance if we're thinking about it realistically. And Buffy succeeds a lot because she only has to fight 1 or 2 adversaries at a time, and most of them seem really stupid. If there were even 10 vampires all attacking at once and they weren't completely incompetent, she would lose. We are closer to finding out what's going on with Joyce, and they're already pretty sure it's not supernatural, and I'm glad they didn't forget about that whole plot in this episode. It's getting pretty heavy. Feelings. That just makes sense. And even though we pushed forward a little bit on the Joyce stuff, we, again, totally disregarded Dawn's arc and her being the key and all that stuff. But because this episode had some legit substance, I'm not as annoyed, but we need to get back to the Dawn/key stuff soon. And how about that actor for Darla? I bet she was so happy to get a call and be like, hey, you want a paycheck for something you did like 6 years ago? And there were so many more Queen songs I could have used for this review. And I know based on that statement, you might call me a liar. And to that, I'd just say, Jesus, is this the world we created? I know it's a hard life, but please, just let me live. I might be the loser in the end. And not using... This is so good. And not... I knew it's going to be really hard to do this. Okay. And not using more songs is a lost opportunity, but now I'm here. I've got one vision. I'm not done yet. You've just got to play the game and spread your wings. See what a fool I've been, stealing all of these song titles for this video. I was under pressure. We need to get as many views on these as we can. Was it all worth it? Yeah. Yeah is actually the title of a Queen song. Because life is real, and in only 7 days, I go crazy. Thank God it's Christmas. I thought that was the perfect ending, too. I gave this one a B-.
I gave it a C+. I did think this episode was a little better than we've been getting. It was interesting to see some of Spike's backstory, which I wasn't expecting. I actually thought the portrayal of different times and places was pretty effective, and it was cool to see them tie things in with previous continuity when it came to Drusilla. I could have done without freaking Angel showing up, though. In my opinion, this season so far has been better than previous ones when it comes to the main story elements, with Joyce's illness carrying through, the stuff with Dawn, which has already gone farther than I would have expected at this point, and with Buffy having already fought what seems to be the main villain, even if we don't actually know anything about her yet. But the individual episodes have all been pretty middling, including this one, even if it was a little better. As usual, some of the humor is good, but some of it is pretty dumb. I think it would work better if they didn't make the characters look so stupid just to throw in some dumb jokes. In this episode, I think of how Xander, Willow, and Anya were acting in the graveyard. It was funny seeing Riley act the way he did, because he's usually so boring and serious, but Willow in particular being so stupid is really disappointing, especially with how much they had her grow in previous seasons. Her character feels like she's hit a dead end at this point. Xander has always been a dead end, and Anya, Tara, and Giles didn't do anything.
And Dawn was only in it at the beginning.
Yeah, and even the Riley stuff in the graveyard felt like he was just there so we wouldn't forget that he exists. But I want to forget that he exists. I'm just glad that Spike's character arc, or whatever it is, I thought was more effectively portrayed than I would have expected. It helps that they actually handled him seriously in this episode instead of making him the comic relief, and treating his attraction to Buffy seriously instead of making it just a complete joke. Even though it still, I feel, doesn't make sense for him to just suddenly be obsessed with Buffy like that. And unlike the last time it came up, I'm actually interested to see where it goes after this episode with how it ended. And I really hope it ends with Riley crying, and not just because somebody ate all the Cheetos.
Man, you and all these Cheeto references, don't try so hard.